At our last meeting, in addition to talking about adding maybe a deck off of the master bathroom, we discussed again with some alternatives with these stairs to the second floor. Now, my floor plan, built from this and not from actual dimensions, I have a discrepancy because these walls I'm pretty sure are accurate because that's the stairwell walls measured at the first floor, but I'm missing about 6 inches down here. They have 15.6, and by the way things work out for me, it looks like it should be 15. So if somebody wants to double check that, inside it should work out like this, from drywall surface to drywall surface, or close to that. Upstairs there were a similar discrepancy, but I measured this dimension here when I was out there, and I know that is accurate, 11.4, and I measured this dimension when I was out there, and that's accurate. I did not measure these three here, so somewhere that extra slop has to come out. And I kind of just modeled this based on some photographs that I had of this. So it's going to be pretty close to this. You know, you guys have to make a decision on what happens with this space up here. But in terms of this, if this does become a deck down here to the south, that's a 32-inch door because that will fit in that existing window opening. But I guess if you wanted to pick up a few inches on that left margin, right margin, however you look at it, you go down to a 30-inch door in there, and technically you can use a 24. There's no requirement on that. But returning to the stairwell, in terms of changing the stair orientation, I assumed that you didn't intend this way. But starting from that and going downstairs and seeing how that impacts us, those are long treads right now, so those can be shortened up, and even that's still a pretty generous tread at 10 inches. And the same riser, so 14 risers down, I think, is what it is. You move that stair over where it, I guess, would belong. You can't come up this way because it comes up in the bathroom, so it goes up that way. Do whatever you want with this space here that you've got or realized, and then upstairs this is what that shapes up like. I don't know whether you have other doors through here or how you divide this space in here, but that is not a bad idea as far as that stairwell goes. So that is that part, and now to this south deck. At our last meeting in February, you indicated a preference for this angled garage as opposed to one that was parallel to this wing of the house. And this is to update you, now taking that addition that we ended up with, which I like this here, and put that garage into it, that single car garage into it. But you had asked me to explore, at least look at a deck out here off of this master bathroom, and this film reviews that as quickly as I can. So there's the beginning point, and then we add this deck in here, ignoring how we're going to support it for the moment. We come up and horse around, and that's about a pretty large deck. It's over 200 feet in any event. And this was like the first finished version kind of that idea. And that is the natural extension of that, whether you want to be that ambitious. And if you are that ambitious, though, this is about as few columns as I can get, unless you went to an expensive, $100 a foot beam, at least for this one here. So that would be about a $1,700 beam if we wanted to eliminate that center column. But there were other opportunities. Kind of, for one thing, this is only 10 feet deep right here, so I wanted to increase that some, and I was able to do this. Probably keeps the deck the same size, or at least the same usable size, but it increases this to something over 12 feet. 12'7" is in here behind those columns. You could probably get away without that that column here on this edge, because this isn't much right there. So you're like that, and then if you give up that section there and make this more like this, then you can pretty easily, I think then it's 3 2x12s as a beam through here, and you can eliminate that center column. And somewhere along the line this door is lost. I see that here. So in these next couple photos, that door is going to be missing. You have to ignore that. And we go to getting rid of that central column here and increase the size of that beam. Probably need to increase the size of this fascia as well. Now this whole bit doesn't need to be here, obviously. This storage door now becomes 64 inches altogether, and this is the least expensive way to go and the most straightforward. And in this one here, we can run the beam all the way onto this wall here. And I believe this is a couple 2x12s. That slope is about 212. You could put ice and water shield on it and then shingle it. This one's a little steeper. You could shingle it, or maybe that whole section is done in rubber. We're showing this one in rubber. But that's the overview of that section, and now I'll show you a few details. I only took a couple shots from down here. This was the most ambitious of those, where the deck is stretched all the way out to the face of the garage. And this is the pullback, where this is about 12 feet deep here. This is still over 200 feet up here, and that piece can either stay or go. These should be done in any event, that retaining type wall. And this is how I've done it, and that was just to manage this bit here. But regardless of whether that bit's done, this should be done sooner rather than later to stop this, because I'll go over the water issues here in a minute, which you're familiar with, or certainly Adam is familiar with them. This is how that sets up, where we keep the deck separated from this roof here. And the deck structure is here, and we'll talk a minute about whether those joists run back into that wall through this projection, or whether we use some sort of a beam back there at that wall. But this is the section through there. We get a little closer, and so this is flashed down into the gutter here, and then I believe, I don't know if I have a cut here, and here it is here. I don't know if you can see it right through here though. I'm just showing corrugated steel sheet as a sealing material, sloped from that back wall down toward the garage, and it ends before the gutter. And so this, and with this piece here flashed into the gutter, this is all, whether, I don't know if this will collect leaves and so forth back there, but it's easily accessible with the door right here. But that's the corrugated sealing over. And then down underneath that, where you had this here, I have just dropped that so that everything is just even down there. You won't see this piece here, and it's more like that. And whether this siding is just like this, just a piece of clad, I would just make that a piece of clad material, although it won't really matter once that's on there. Well, I guess it will matter. I'd make that just another piece of clad material, aluminum clad 1x. And that's how that would be there. And then this is the corrugated ceiling sloping down toward that south end, down toward this way to a gutter down here. That's how I've done the downspouts. This doesn't really need to happen. You could have it out here. That one needs to happen. This other one you could have out here at this end. And looking at it sideways, that's your slope ceiling here, this gray piece with these tapered shims fastened to the framing, and then that's there in the gutter. And that's why, because that gutter is all the way down there by the time it's done, that's why we end up with this big fascia board here. And I really hate that I missed that door getting accidentally deleted. But nevertheless, this is that big fascia board. It's almost 14 inches, just to drop low enough so that all that gutter has something to be nailed to, for one thing, and isn't seen so much. This clads these columns. Those columns now end up at 7.5 inches square. But notice this particular piece here. Now there's no deck beam back here at all, because I have those joists running back into that house. But that is going to be a pain in the neck with a lot of blocking and so forth. I'll cover that in a minute. But first of all, if you just go down to a roof here, that's no problem. Those, whether those are trusses or stick frame, they can hang right on that wall without a problem from the building department. This is the type of beam it would take. I think that's a couple 2x12s. And if you wanted to go to LVLs, that's a couple 9-inch LVLs, would do it that way. And keep that open. And again, that's about 12 foot 7 deep from outside of this column and beam to the wall without the door. And that last column can actually be eliminated. If we go to the LVLs, that can be eliminated entirely, and then you're into this just a single column here with the roof structure. That can't be done with the deck structure, but it can be done with the roof structure. The deck structure, it would need to stay. We have this big fascia we're dealing with because of that gutter down here. So this deck, without the beam back there, for example, in terms of framing this without a beam back there, we're into something like this, where these new 2x8s go through. Right now there's going to be an end joist here, or band joist or something like that. That's going to have to be removed. These are going to go back here and against these eye joists. Those eye joists will need to be padded out so that it's flush with this, with their top and bottom chords. And then these are put in, and then new blocking is going to have to be put in there and at each of these locations where these penetrate here. So that is definitely something to consider, and the alternative is putting a beam back here at the back side of this deck. As I said, with a roof we don't have to worry at all, but at the back side of this deck we could put a beam here. So because I knew that was going to be a headache, not just in its framing but in its flashing situation, I began to explore putting a beam at the back end of this roof structure, or this deck structure, back here. And when I did that, for one thing I found out that those columns can, since the beam only needs to be a couple 2x10s, those columns can be 4x4s back here. So these back here are cladding up at 5.5 inches apiece. And because we can't have a column at this end, I have that beam, those two 2x10s, extending all the way over past the end of the deck and bearing on this wall here, which means this bit here will have to be flashed with rubber or whatever, which is pretty effectively done. And this is a close-up view, by the way, of how this would actually shape up, where there's double 2x8 at the end and a big hanger that holds all those for holding that railing up there. And here is the galvanized metal ceiling underneath. So you can see how fairly easy it would be to flash into that gutter and avoid any kind of drainage issues up there. Now that is if you're willing to live with this 4x4 here, 5.5 finished clad column somewhere in this region here. But if you don't, if you want to get rid of that as well and make it even more open under there, unfortunately take a 14-inch paralam, and that beam there from there to there would be about $2,000. So that's really the price of eliminating that column there. But otherwise, probably it should be done with this sort of framing at the north end without penetrating all this and getting into all that rigmarole. That's what it would take there. And there are just a few other things in this film yet to go. One of the things that is going to happen, regardless of whether this roof is done or whether a deck is done, or even if nothing is done, which is to widen out that, right now that is the one at the top of the stairs to driveway is a 32-inch, and this is a 30. And since it's now going to be a long walk around this garage, and you don't want to bring furniture and whatnot down here, this non-existent door, there it is there now, where this is where we move, this goes to 36 inches. I don't know how big that door is, but in any event, it'd be better to have a bigger passageway down through here. The nut. So this is what we had been working with, regardless of whether it was a roof or deck over, was this 30-inch door through here. Now at the time we did think we were going to put 32 through there, and we had a 32 at the top of the stairs, and there was room to get that to a 36-inch door at the top of the stairs, and that's with the roof or the deck. That can happen, or with none of them it can happen. It should happen. And that is kind of the wrap up of that area there. I came back and did a few more things. So this is with the smaller beam, 2x10s in the middle column, which is no big deal to me, frankly. But if you did want to go to that whole sleek look, that's the $2,000 beam there. And the roof, and with the roof, I don't know why the camera shifted, but you might want to just consider pouring steps as part of this retaining wall system here. And that, you would do that, I guess you could do that even if you put a deck up here with no entrance down, or no stairs down. In lieu of stairs down, this becomes just a private deck, and then you have this underneath. And this was just that 36-inch door at the top of the stairs. Really didn't have an impact out here. And the scientist is always present behind that door. This next part is just based on the topography as reported by the county in 2017, so that largely hasn't changed. And this light blue is pretend that's the water table. The lake is further this way, but on the map, here's your house here with the pink, and where we're looking at back here is that water. And when I take that water table and I start bringing it up, and obviously you could see that's right at the edge of the map. So that's once the lake is up at the edge, or once the water table is up at the edge. And I just began to lift that hypothetical water table 2 feet at a time, where it encroaches and floods this area here. So it's pretty obvious where this trench needs to come through here. There it is there, the minimum amount when it first starts creeping in. But there is your property line, so your trench or whatever has to be on that side of it. And then I did bringing this up a little bit, horsing around with this to see where it was going to be deepest. And it's out about here, which is 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 or 60 feet that way. I've had a civil engineer do this water situation on at least 2 or 3 occasions. You can pay them and they can tell you what is the best thing to do to handle this water. My guess is, though, that they're going to put some sort of collection vat or underground tube, maybe an 18-inch diameter tube to collect this water immediately, and then make a trench out here toward the lake. I went back and checked the last time I had this done, where a civil engineer specified the drainage solution. It was about $3,000 for a property. It was just under $3,000 for a property in Sugar Creek. It is about 324 feet or so, 325 feet out there to the edge of that lake, to the edge of the shore, maybe 20 here, so 350 feet. You could pay the drainage person, but I would be tempted to put a French drain here with an 18-inch tube at the bottom of it and fill it up with gravel all through here with a drain at the surface. And then it's about $800 in tube, 6-inch tube, where in the 8-inch tube is, so yeah, 6-inch from here to there is about $800, and 8-inch from there to there, and maybe, who knows, I don't know what it takes though, is $1,700. So I presume a person could run 10-inch all the way there for $2,500 and still not be into the engineering fees. But you wouldn't have that guarantee that that works. And this would have to be installed correctly, obviously. But for fun, just to see what might be entailed with this topography laid out like the county shows it is, and I don't know how they developed that, but it's fairly reliable. I made a cut through here, going up this way, to see what kind of fall we're going to have and how that's going to work out with the lake. Initially though, when I started looking at this and bringing this up 2 feet at a time, like this, when I got to there, I wondered if a person couldn't just, these two are level here, well maybe another couple feet, and would that far be enough? and that is only about 120 feet maybe, compared to the 324 out to the water's edge. But when I get back to this section view that I mentioned here, you can see this. This is the patio here, where the water wants to come down a drain here. And so the top of that drain, really, the bottom of that drain, whether it's 6 inch or 8 inch or 4 inch or whatever it might be take, is here, after 2 inches of gravel are underneath it. This pink line here all the way to the left, and then it follows through. And all this white area you see here is the earth that had to be trenched out for that. And you can see, like in this region, it's 4 or 5 feet deep at the deepest, 4 or 5 feet to get to the bottom of the trench there. But you could see that that line does not see daylight, at least on this map, until we're out here. And that is not all the way to the water's edge, but it is out to there, which is, it looks like about 50 or 60 feet from the water's edge. That's my best guess, based on what I've got, is that you have to run at least that 270 feet line out there just to evacuate this orphaned pool here. So that's got to be part of the approach to at least this end here. However, I wanted to make sure that that was actually going to have to be the case, and I came back here and horsed around with a few other things. I'll run through those quickly. Started out, I went back and looked at the drawings that the engineer had made for a place in Oakwood where they were adding 1,200 feet and they had to retain the water. But I used some of those diagrams, and just because I wanted to see, as I said, and built this hypothetical drain system where this is a 40-foot piece of 18-inch. That's what they had called out for this added space. But they were looking to retain the water on the land. We don't have to do that. We're looking to evacuate it. But it still can handle a lot of overflow. So I just to put something together, I acted as if we were going to bury this 18-inch tube, have a surface drain up here, as you saw a little scrap of it here, and then lead out with 8-inch smooth wall all the way to the lake. And this is from that side, and based on those drawings from the engineer, I need at least 6 or 7 inches of for 2 or 3 inches of gravel and 5 or 6 inches of soil above this, and I need a couple inches of gravel underneath it. That piece is set level, so that is down maybe about 32 to the bottom of that trench for that, which becomes about 4 feet deep over here. And that is its extent in this little experiment, where it runs all the way to where the land drops off and into the lake. And so you can run the outlet, the 8-inch outlet, on that 18-inch tube. You can run the 8-inch outlet off the top to keep it higher, so we don't have to excavate quite as much, because you can see now this is where this is set level. That 8-inch smooth wall needs to have at least an 1/8 per foot fall, and that's what that does. And so you end up, this trench in this region is close to 4 feet deep. Maybe it's even 4'6" at that highest point there, and stretches out to the lake. And you can see where it's under the ground. All this is earth on top of it, this white section in here, and then it finally penetrates the ground at that end. You see it here, right there. It's out to that red pole, which is out at the water's edge. But it looked to me like it surfaced earlier than that, like maybe back about there on this buried 8-inch line. It looks like it would come sloping at 1/8 inch per foot based on those parameters back there. It comes out of the ground about there, finally surfaces, and that is still about 250 feet from the corner of this building to where it comes out of the ground, taking that approach. By the way, this brings up the fact that we're 18 feet from this corner line, and according to, this is governed by the Warren County Rural Zoning Code, and it's an R1, and they want a total of 50 feet with a minimum side of 20. So at least one of them has to be 20. So whether they're going to nitpick about that little corner, that little 4 square feet projection, we have 53 up here, which is more than enough. If they do complain about that, they'll have to go to a variance, so it should be an open and shut case. That's very, very small encroachment. So maybe the administrator has the authority to just allow that, but you should be aware of it in any event. So next, after that corrugated drain tile experiment, so because I wasn't sure that that 240-foot trench and material was the answer, and it seemed to me that, well, I mean, it doesn't just seem, it's a fact, that this elevation is lower than this elevation. So it should be possible to cut a swale through here if there's enough fall from here to wherever out here to make that happen. So I ran a little experiment with that as well. These red lines, this is the existing topography based on county action. Those going to have to be resculpted back some. But to begin with, one of the issues with trying to create this swale all the way down here at some point where it is successful is that from our point of the grade here all the way down to here, which is almost 150 feet in length, is only down 4 inches. From here to there is only down 4 inches, which that would only give us a 16th per foot. I mean, it should flow, but it would be better if it were more. And if we stretch that, this is a hypothetical 3-foot trench through here, a 3-foot swale through here. And if we stretch that out to the next point, or to some point further down the line, I show it out almost 200 feet, then we get 1/8 inch per foot on the fall. And so I began to create this swale down through here using these elevation lines. You'll see these green ones move as we sculpt this and add, as we start to build this swale down through here, and then we add it halfway, and then we just go the whole way. And that's all falling at a little over an 1/8 inch per foot, 0.13 per foot. And then so this is, once we start to create that swale, this is how that develops. We get it out there and bring it out the rest of the way, and then start dropping that water table, and you can see that it flows down into the lake. And the same thing from this side, where it's receding down that swale we've created. It should be successful. Either of these would be successful. And you can see it here. This hard line right here is that swale, right where the white ends is the top of the surface of that 1/8 inch per foot swale out to where it sees daylight, or where it's flowing downhill then, which I think is going to take a couple hundred feet. And these are just some cuts through here. If you look, this is where it's most severe. Right here, the hillside is most severe here, and these are 4 feet to the bottom of the trench. That's a cut through there. It's 4 feet from here to here, apparently. But there's that path, that swale coming up, and I don't know if this little short film might show you something about it, but I was trying to see that it can be done, but I don't know which way you want to go on that, but one way or another, as I said, it has to be solved. So that is all, and that's more than enough, I'm sure. Thanks very much, and I will talk to you soon. I appreciate it.